This one has been sort of a runaway hit in cinemas across the world. It's a film by Uwe Boll, I believe I'm pronouncing the name correctly, German filmmaker. Put himself on the map for making some rather horrendous adaptations in film of video games. Built up a bit of a bad reputation over that. Well, he's come out with a new one, stars Armie Hammer. It's called Citizen Vigilante. Most people are saying it's a rather imperfect film, but a good one. Topical, relevant for our times. And those of you who are looking to go see something in the cinemas, after doing like me, staying away for so long, only really going if there's something really, really good, this might be the film that gets you back into the cinema. But got a video here from Tom Foe. The title, Citizen Vigilante, is heresy. Let's take a look at this.
Annie a good movie? No. But it is. So, is Citizen Vigilante a good movie? No. But it is a timely movie. One that has come during one of the worst periods of Hollywood films. Financial bombs and creatively bankrupt ideas full of reboots and woke gay reimaginings, most of which are either written by AI or worse, millennials. So bad, in fact, that the only good movie that's made any money is about what it's like to date a Gen Z woman.
Oh, no. No.
What?
No, 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 don't do that!
But in all seriousness, the film industry as a whole...
No, God, are they really all like that? I find it difficult to believe they're all truly like that. Maybe some of them, perhaps even most of them, but God, can't be all of them. Fucking hell. Handsome chap, it's good bad. Reactionary responses make it better.
Has refused to deal with or even acknowledge some of the biggest issues in the West. And that is migrant crime, gang rapes, fraud, race tensions, immigration as a whole. And when Hollywood does decide to comment on these things, they always choose the safest, most liberal circle jerk takes while simultaneously making themselves feel as if they're rebels or punk rock, when in reality, they're just elites playing dress up, and their version of punk is the most corporate, soulless LARP in modern history.
They are the establishment. There was a time when they went against the grain and became rather anti-establishment because they were once again running out of ideas. We've had this sort of cycle in Hollywood, in film, in entertainment before. And we've had these sort of societal conditions previously. It's how you got great film franchises like Dirty Harry and stars like Clint Eastwood. They're the elites from the Hunger Games. They really are, especially if you watch them on those awful award shows. Apparently a bunch of cinemas here are part of the blockade of the film, along with other ones in Germany, Sweden, and elsewhere. Yes, in parts of Europe, they absolutely refuse to show Citizen Vigilante. I believe it is banned in some parts of, or at least for some viewers, in Germany. The death of the Western genre. Yeah, they don't really do Westerns anymore, do they? But if they do, closest you can come to is some sort of fake and gay version like Yellowstone. Boll has a reputation for strange public behavior. Yes, he will actually challenge his critics to fisticuffs.
So it's no wonder that a film like Citizen Vigilante has gained the amount of support it has over the past week. Not because of the film's quality, but for the fact that this film is putting the rage people have felt surrounding these issues into the spotlight, and has given those people something that makes them feel heard and seen. It's not like these problems are...
And really, the bar is so low now that that's about all you need to do, is just make your audience feel as though they are seen and heard.
Are only cared about by a few racists on the internet. Protests are going on in the UK over this right now. In 2024, a man was able to run an entire presidential campaign on the back of mass deportations in the US. Now, has he done a good job with any of that? No, he's kind of fucking everything up. But that's besides the point. The people of the West are hungry for change when it comes to immigration, deportation.
And something that those in power are trying so desperately to distract to delay, drag things out, to try and diffuse that energy. Nothing really seems to work over the long term. It is one of those things where you will give the people what they want, and if you don't, they will take it from you. I liked Clint Eastwood's Unforgiven, but that one's over 30 years old. Even still, his oldies are goodies.
Legal and illegal, remigration, like all of these problems, they want change. They know they need change because where this is going, it's not sustainable. And Uwe Boll putting out this film now, only for it to get banned in his own country of Germany, has had a Streisand effect to the point where this film is in a completely different category for being judged now. This isn't being viewed as a normal movie, and that's why the quality doesn't really matter. It's what the film is talking about. It's what the film has in it. That's
the same sort of standards that Hollywood would say about a lot of other revolutionary type films or films with a revolutionary message. So many of the sort of accepted establishment critic voices would overlook all of it because it has the right message. I mean, how many times have we seen the critics have their reviews be, certified 100% fresh on some trashy woke movie, and meanwhile the audience score is absolute rotten on Rotten Tomatoes? This is the same thing that's going on right now. The critics are baffled, or they immediately give the knee-jerk negative response, and the audience just eats it up. Hateful Eight was also a good watch, in my opinion. Not as though some people seem to think it is. The responses make it better. It is, however, a long movie in comparison with modern ones at over 3 hours. That is quite a long one. It's a meta film, yes. I think that's a good way to describe Citizen Vigilante. It's a meta-type film. It speaks to sort of meta-commentary and puts a voice and words to things that people are thinking and feeling, but either have not yet verbalized or for whatever reason they can't verbalize it.
Problems that a lot of people in real life are dealing with. The movie opens up with a woman getting stabbed in the neck by a black guy. That isn't just something they made up. That's something that happens all the fucking time, all over the West. And that's the point. This film, because of all the controversy and because the people who made it had the balls to do what they've done, it has put it in a different category. It's not seen as a normal movie. It's seen as something more. And even though this film is heresy to the status quo, because make no mistake about it, that's what this is. This film is heresy.
We've had a few of those already that have committed absolute acts of heresy going against the Hollywood establishment. And the Hollywood establishment trying the damnedest to make sure that those films never see the light of day. We're seeing it with Citizen Vigilante. We're even seeing it with something that was not political at all, but was just a film that the creator wanted to see made. It was, a fulfillment of a lifelong dream, and that was Markiplier's recent film, which is essentially just sort of a bottle show as feature film. Those are sometimes, in television, the best episodes. But he had to fight to get that made. He had to fight to get it made the way he wanted, and then the distribution networks of Hollywood fought him tooth and nail because he didn't want to play by the rules of their racket. And so he had to do an end run around everyone to get it into theaters. And he did. And it was a hit. People loved it. And it was probably one of the lower budget films put out by any production, but also showed that there's a lot of bloat in modern Hollywood productions. That you actually can get things done for a lot cheaper. I think we started seeing this with Godzilla -1. This was a film that won the Academy Award for Best Special Effects. And they did it for a budget in the tens of millions of dollars. Still a very large sum. But compared to what Hollywood has been doing for hundreds of millions, even billions of dollars, what Toho did was on a shoestring. And yet they were able to pull that off and make it look incredible but a fraction of what Hollywood charges to do. In many ways, make it look even better, but they also have the advantage of having about close to 70 years to get special effects just right. And it is indeed an art form over in Japan. Hollywood has, in recent years and decades, in a word, become a grift, where a lot of people got really rich but did not deliver a very good product. And now that whole system has sort of run its course to where Hollywood is afraid to take risks, afraid to do anything new. And anyone who tries to do something new and innovative, and for a fraction of the cost, the establishment in Hollywood and elsewhere fights them tooth and nail over it, because they know that gravy train that they've been enjoying for a long time is coming to an end, but they can no longer justify it. That things are coming back down to earth, and they're going to have to start making do with less. Yeah, movies like Citizen Vigilante get buried and suppressed rather than drowned in bad reviews by film critics. They just won't even allow it to become known of. Yeah, if the negative reviews can't depress turnout, they just won't talk about it. They know how the game is played. People blaming Trump for the pace of deportation always forget how much resistance he gets from dim politicians and bureaucrats. At some point, that stops being a valid excuse, though, and eventually you've just got to steamroll over them, and eventually the crisis gets so bad that those who get in the way need to be steamrolled. One and only Stormy, welcome in. Happy 250th birthday, Mr. X. Well, it's not my 250th birthday, it's America's 250th birthday, but thank you all the same. Now, my birthday is actually coming up at the end of the month. I have mixed feelings about that one. We'll just leave it at that.
Have a status quo. When you have things that are acceptable to talk about and make films of and have discussions about online, you will always have a line in the sand of things that are not allowed. Despite freedom of speech or whatever that means nowadays, you always have things that are too far, too much for certain people.
The taboo.
And those people just so happen to be elites. Those people just so happen to be in charge of the media, the journalists. It's all of this stuff. You're not allowed to talk about these things. These things are considered heretical to talk about. And when you do so, you become a heretic. Because this identity politics that have been going on for as long as I've been alive, it is a religion in a lot of ways, and when you speak out against them...
I'd rather be a heretic than a coward or a liar. Men can call me a heretic as much as they like, but the ultimate judgment belongs to God. Well, now we know Rex is not 250, whether younger or older, the world may never know. Wasn't that a popular pro-Trump mantra in 2015 online, get on or get run over? Yeah, what happened to all that? Seems like that train ran out of steam, and that's unfortunate.
Main narrative... you are a heretic in their eyes. That's why this film is being viewed the way it is. Uwe Boll has made movies that are kind of like this extreme, just with different subject matter, his entire career. I grew up watching his movies.
Sometimes you have to be. Sometimes you have to have some sort of extreme, outrageous message or meme or something out there in the public consciousness to push the conversation forward and to move the Overton window of acceptable discourse to the point where these things can be talked about and ultimately addressed, where something can be done about them.
With my brothers because of how crazy they are. And it's like, dude, it's honestly not that much more crazy than any of his other films. But because it's dealing with the issues that it is, that's why it's controversial. That's why it's getting banned. And the people are supporting it, if for anything, just simply to say fuck you to the mainstream media and Hollywood. Because the people of the West as a whole who are powerless against these things because of their own politicians who have betrayed them in so many ways. This film acknowledges that. In fact, there's a part in the movie, I don't know if you've seen it, but there's a part in the movie where he drugs a judge and he's going to kill him. And the reason why is because this judge let a bunch of migrant boys out of prison. He gave them a slap on the wrist for raping a young innocent girl. And he's...
What an interesting idea. Failing that, as I've said so many times before, jail the judges. If you don't take the Bukele approach, impeach and if necessary jail the judges, you're not going to get anywhere.
Said they just had adjustment issues into society, and it's because the society's so hard for these immigrants, so they didn't know any better, essentially. So he drugs him, And before he kills him, he literally says it. He says, you might as well have raped that girl yourself because you are put in a position of authority to where you are supposed to protect your own people, and you've done.
I honestly despise judges. I really do. They think that because they wear black robes and hand down verdicts from the bench that somehow they are gods. And they need to be reminded that they are not. That they are human beings like the rest of us. And they think that somehow they are shielded from the consequences of their actions, and that that's somehow a good thing so that they can rule objectively. I don't think that's a good thing. I don't think that's a good thing. I think they need to be made to feel the full brunt of the consequences of their actions. They need to shoulder that burden along with the criminals. I have such a big problem with progressive judges. Yes, they all need to be jailed and they all need to be removed. Crazy how we have all the branches of government to watch over each other, but there's no accountability. Yes, it's all about diffusing blame to where it's never really one person or one group's fault. And nobody ever really gets held accountable. In more sensible times, in times where sanity and a clearer vision prevail, it would have been a simple, okay, then you're all responsible, you're all going to prison, or you're all going to face execution. That would certainly send a message. That was mainly when they were arguing. I remember Rampage being touted by the left here as a movie demonstrating how traditional society forces young people into violence through emotional suppression, mainly when they were arguing for emotional liberation. Emotional liberation? That sounds gay. Tiger and I almost always vote out the existing judges, as well you should. I have mixed feelings on the idea of voting for judges on the ballot. On one hand, I can see the appeal. On the other hand, I can also see the appeal of maintaining the tradition of they are appointed and not elected. I don't know.
The opposite of that. That is real. You know, Uwe Boll didn't have to have a crazy imagination to write that. That is something that has happened over and over again. Not only
he's just doing what so many other writers, directors have done previously. Big thing whenever Law and Order was still first run on television. Always the promos are ripped from the headlines. So many of the great ideas for stories oftentimes just come from the newspaper, because so often reality is stranger than fiction and more fascinating than fiction. And that's all Uwe Boll was doing, is just taking and condensing all the stories that you have seen in the headlines in Europe, in the United Kingdom, for many years, and making a film about that.
In the UK, but in Canada and in America, in the West as a whole. And so this film has given a spotlight to those issues. And is it the greatest movie ever? Like I said, it's not a good movie. I watched it, and I mean, it's Uwe Boll, all right? I knew what it was going to be before I watched it. And I will say this, he did step his game up when it came to cinematography. The cinematography is not like that bad. It's actually...
Well, he's had about 15 years to get good on that. Now Law and Order SVU has a lesbian victim being an apologist for a rapist because he was a different color, so he didn't know better. Yeah, SVU is just, I've just nicknamed it the sex police. And they're just, it's always men are the bad guys, men are always the rapists, and usually it's the white man that's the bad guy that did it. Shows like SVU lost the plot years ago. Law and Order, I think, was just on television for too long and on reruns on other networks for too long, to where people just sort of forgot that it was still a first-run television program on NBC in America. And so that's why, and just by the time they finished, 20 years later, it's like nobody remained from the original cast. And I think they moved too many of the wrong people into more senior roles. Like Sam Waterston's character, yeah, it's nice to see Jack McCoy get graduated up from executive ADA to stepping in as the acting district attorney, but it just didn't suit him. It's sort of like the idea of Captain Kirk from Star Trek being promoted to Admiral. And so many films he spends lamenting that he should not have accepted the promotion. Even Spock telling him, It was a mistake for him to surrender the captaincy of the Enterprise and ascend to the Admiralty. And ultimately, he got demoted in the end and died a captain instead of an admiral. That was the one thing that he told Picard in Star Trek Generations. First rule, don't let them promote you. I think that was the big problem with McCoy's character, is that he got promoted, and it was not a good thing for him. Not a good thing for this character. And certainly the actor he did not command the gravitas of predecessors like Fred Thompson, like Stephen Hill, all these other people that have been those sort of elder statesmen in that role. Sam Waterston, the best he can manage is just aging hippie. Kirk told that to Picard in Generations. Yes, I remember that. When you're in that chair, you can make a difference. Yes, that was the line. That was the line. Thank you, Phalanx. New Doctor Who ran for too long. Should have stopped 10 years ago. Yeah, I agree with that. I think it really started to get wobbly and go off the rails in the final cities of Peter Capaldi's years. Capaldi was still a decent Doctor. I say that, even though I'm a bit biased, fellow Scotsman. But yeah, I saw like first episode or two of Jodie Whittaker's Doctor. Nah, I was like, nah, it's over. It's done. Just not the same. I put Doctor Who in the freezer for a few years and bring it back out woker than ever. Probably, given that BBC is run by abject communists. Everyone keeps trying to publicly cope about that and say, oh yeah, no, it's coming back, it's coming back. No, it's not. They don't have the money to pull it off. That type of show, that type of production, the Beebs can't do it alone. They needed to reach out to Disney and other companies to get that done. The conglomerate that owned BBC America for many years, when Capaldi was the Doctor, those episodes were a co-production between the BBC in London and BBC America in the United States. Because BBC America, it's branded BBC, but it's actually, I think, owned by some sort of media conglomerate. I don't know if it's Time Warner or one of those, or Warner Brothers Discovery, or whatever they're calling themselves. But it's actually, I remember reading it was part of a collection of cable television networks in America. They just licensed the BBC branding to call it BBC America. And then when that turned out to not be enough money, they turned to Disney. And you can tell, production value, they absolutely went ham on Doctor Who. Throughout Jodie Whittaker's time, the special when they brought back David Tennant, the Judy Gatwa years, even though I will never watch any of those episodes. Just the clips that I have seen, production values quite high on the show. You can have high production values and you can still have a shit plotline and still have an overall shit production. And that's what we got with modern woke Doctor Who. Honestly, it was better in the now old days when it was just BBC and BBC Wales working on it. You had actors like Christopher Eccleston, David Tennant as the stars of the show. Matt Smith was alright. Peter Capaldi, is okay. Back when things were smaller, when the budgets were more limited, that forced people to focus on good writing. I think it's not just wokeism that ended up destroying modern Doctor Who. It was the curse of being given too much money, becoming a victim of your own success. AMC networks, yes. Yes, the same company that owns BBC America also owns AMC, which Americans will know AMC as the network which had Mad Men. About 3 mega conglomerates own almost all the TV broadcasters in America. Yeah, it's getting smaller, and it's concerning.
Pretty decent compared to his older films. And this movie isn't really even that extreme. But like I said, it's the issues he's talking about, because this is something he himself has talked about. These are problems he cares about because it's in his country. It's stuff he's seen. It's stuff we've all seen. And that's why this film is now on a different level. But is it a good film? No, not really. There's like at least 30 minutes in this movie that don't need to be in there. They don't like do anything really. Like there's like a 5-minute
That's all
awkward,
right. They can always do a
uninterrupted
director's cut
sex
later.
scene. It's kind of funny what they do with it, but like at the same time, it doesn't do anything for the actual.
I know that's what they ended up doing with Godfather Part 3. Francis Ford Coppola took the original cut of Godfather 3, and I think he trimmed down close to half an hour from the original cut of the film and retitled it The Godfather Coda, The Death of Michael Corleone. That was originally going to be the title of that film, The Death of Michael Corleone. Coppola had not as much creative control over that film compared to Godfather 1 and 2, and so Paramount effectively forced him to retitle it The Godfather Part 3. That was the one film that he had to make for Paramount, because all of his other dream projects, or one of his other big dream projects that he sold to Paramount, ended up being a flop. That seems to be quite often the way Coppola's films work. The stuff that he really likes, that he's really into, very poorly received by audiences that don't really understand it, don't really get it. And the very commercial works, those are the ones that end up being hits with him.
Story, and there's even scenes that I would leave in the movie that could just be shorter. Like, you don't need 2 minutes of people walking up a flight of stairs. That's despite the point. It's Uwe Boll. It's his movie,
Yeah.
and
That
that's
can always
kind
be
of the thing
tightened
about
up in
films.
in
And
editing
I love
and
movies.
post-production.
I love film. I truly believe film is the ultimate form of art. I think it is the ultimate form of storytelling. I know a lot of people say video games are like the next evolution. I get the argument, but I think films are better because a lot of people can't really get into games. I love games, but a lot of people, they can't really play games. It doesn't really work for them. But with a movie, that's different. And that's something humanity has always had, which is storytelling. That is one of the most powerful things about us.
He's right.
Is the fact that we like to.
Not everyone can play video games, but just about anyone can watch a film. That's a really good point. Bram Stoker's Dracula seems to be his best received film globally. I could see that. And Apocalypse Now, yes, there was another good one. Yeah, the ones that are more kind of commercial type films that Coppola made usually ended up being hits. And the ones where production was an absolute struggle turned out to be the most iconic. Apocalypse Now, The Godfather. There was a lot of struggle to get those made, and The Godfather almost did not get completed. It almost did not make it. There were probably more than one occasion where Paramount came really close to pulling the plug, because they themselves were backed into a corner, and it wasn't clear back then whether Paramount would survive. 1970s, we had a lot of the same problems that we're seeing now. People were just not going to movies anymore. They were just watching film reruns on television. They're staying home. Economy was shit. And film studios in Hollywood just did not know how best to proceed forward. They had already tried big ensemble productions with big disaster films like Airport, Earthquake, Towering Inferno, It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. Nothing seemed to be working. Great films, all of them. People weren't showing up at the box office to purchase tickets. And so hard as it may be to believe now, back then there was a very real danger that investors were going to come in, the 70s equivalent of the private equity types, purchase Paramount Pictures, and then just shut the whole thing down. A lot of people don't remember this, but there was actually a bid at one point to take over Paramount, shut down the whole filmmaking operation, bulldoze the studios to the ground, and just put up office blocks and condos, because in the eyes of these investors, the real estate underneath Paramount Pictures was more valuable than the film studio itself. There were fears Japanese companies would buy out American industry in the coming decades. Yes, and they came close in some respects, especially in Hollywood. I know Sony was one of the big examples. They purchased Columbia Pictures and TriStar and sort of merged them together. And they eventually bought MGM Studios. And now MGM Studios, I think, got renamed as Sony Pictures Studios. But at one point, they had big, beautiful sort of cursive lettering of Welcome to Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer Studios. No, it's just got the Sony logo on it. I know you still see a lot of that in, like, Cyberpunk and Cyberpunk themed works from the 80s and into the 90s. It was a little bit of the plot line with the 1991 film Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah. There was a big scare with Japanese automotive companies invading, as it were, the American car market. And that was one that was most aggressively responded to with tariffs, which is why so many Japanese automakers opted to build factories in the United States to build and sell cars. Now you only really see MGM in Vegas. Yeah, and I think that's just licensing more than anything. And I don't know, I thought I heard somewhere that they were going to be taking away the MGM branding for some of the hotels there. I don't know. Vegas is not what it used to be. Vegas has gotten far too greedy with the resort fees and the parking fees and everything else, to the point now they got so greedy people stopped showing up. Now it's literally cheaper to go somewhere else like Shreveport or Bossier City in America, or go to the Indian casinos in Oklahoma than it is to go to the casinos on the Las Vegas Strip, or anywhere in Las Vegas for that matter. It is to the point now where you look at the numbers, Vegas is hemorrhaging money. What used to be billions of dollars in profit has been reduced to hundreds of millions. Now that's still a lot of money, but when you're so used to putting in billions, that's a big drop. It's a noticeable drop, and it's making a lot of people nervous. Cyberpunk was a genre that lived off American societal anxieties over Japan. Yeah, there was very real fears that, that Japan would just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and that they would just sort of take over. And had they been left unchecked, they might actually have become a massive economic power. But it wasn't automotive terrorists or anything like that that ended it and caused the lost decades. It was central bank policy. It was central banks deciding, no, good times are over for Japan. We need to keep America at number one. So devalue your yen. And they basically just told them, stop being so good. It was enshittification of the Japanese economy via monetary policy, via central bank policy. Just read or watch Princes of the Yen to know more. That's probably the best source I can think of for things like that. Back to the Future set, they seem to think the future was Japanese. Yeah, for a long time we thought the future was Japanese. Probably would have been better off that way. Chrysler, Ford, and General Motors almost ended up in Japanese ownership. You know what? It probably would have done them a bit of good. Certainly with Chrysler and General Motors. If anyone could cut through the largesse and the bureaucracy and turn them into powerhouses once again, it would have been someone like the Japanese. We'll never know now, unfortunately. Best the world could manage was handing Chrysler over to the Italians. And look what happened with that. We ended up with Chrysler 300s rebadged as Lancias, and Town & Country minivans badged as Lancias. What sort of heresy is that? It's unthinkable. And now the Japanese can't even manage Red Lobster. The lost decades did a number. They really did. They really did. All because central banks just decided, nope, good times are over. We're not having this anymore. Downturn in the Japanese economy also contributed to the slowing down of Japanese expansion in China. How much better that would have been for American and Western national security if they'd been allowed to expand in China the way they wanted to. Keep China on the back foot.
Tell stories, whether they're fictional or they're nonfiction, they're completely real. It doesn't matter. Storytelling is one of the main things that makes humans humans. And recently, as of late, you've had Hollywood and even independent filmmaking as a whole, you've had them kind of refuse to talk about certain issues, and when they do it in the most tone-deaf ways. And that's why I say this film is a timely movie.
They don't really know how
it's
anymore.
Released at a perfect moment. It's a perfect storm of all these different problems that are going on, especially with the gang rape report that just came out in the UK, and with all the videos. I mean, dude, in France this past week, there's a video of a young kid getting the shit beat out of him by a bunch of migrant kids, and they kill him. I'm not going to show the video here for obvious reasons, but they're literally kicking his head in, and they fucking kill him. That just happened this week. And that's not the first or the last time that's happened.
And how interesting it took the frogs to go against the nudge unit of France and say, nah, we need to stand and fight. This can't go on. I believe it was the mother of that young lad who basically said something to the effect of, no, this is our fight now. Consider this a rallying cry. Consider this a war cry. Which, based French mum, hello? About bloody time. But ironic, it's the French of all people. Never knew they had it in them. We should have allowed Japan to keep their foothold in China after World War II. I mean, stood a better chance of keeping the communists at bay. China would have ended up a much different place. But no, everybody wanted to get rid of their empires back then, because everyone felt guilty over Big Bad Mustache Man. And so because of that, nobody was allowed to have empires anymore, and nobody was allowed to have proper countries, except for people in the third world, of course, and except for communist countries. Most Korean companies had to slow down their industry at the time because it was heavily dependent upon Japanese branding. Not so much anymore. I mean, Samsung is an entity to its own. If anyone has kind of realized something resembling that Oriental cyberpunk future, it's the Koreans. It's the Koreans and companies like Samsung and Hyundai. Takes just one or two families to stand up. I mean, they might get arrested, but they can't arrest every victim's family. That's true. If enough people can stand up, they can't arrest everyone. Eventually, you've got yourself a movement. Japanese had already been expelled from Manchuria and the coastal regions by the time of the end of the war. True. They got pushed back because Allies decided to build an alliance with both the communists and the nationalists. That turned out to be a long-term mistake. America pulled the support for the nationalists as the war ended, arguably leaving them with Soviet-supported Red Chinese. Yeah, and that's how you got the situation with Taiwan and West Taiwan.
Gonna happen. We're seeing this all over.
We're still paying the price for all of that.
It's being suppressed in so many different ways. So this film is a timely movie, and you were never gonna get a movie that tackles these issues, at least the first film of its kind. You were never going to get something like this from a mainstream Hollywood director. You were never going to get this with actors who are popular and accepted by the mainstream. The first person that was going to have to be underground this type of film had to be somebody like Uwe Boll, which, if you know anything about him and his career, he's always been an outsider. He's always been hated. And I mean, yeah, his movies, in my opinion, aren't that good, but at the very least, they are kind of entertaining.
At least he's fucking trying. At least he's fucking trying, which is more than can be said for a lot of people. At least he's doing something. I would rather somebody do something and it be imperfect and perfected over time than just let perfect be the enemy of good and nothing gets fucking done. You can make continuous improvements as you go along. It doesn't have to be perfect from the drop. Everyone else is remaking movies and changing the model message, yes. Corrupting the original intent of the original properties. When more than anything, we just need to invert that. We need new IPs. We need new story concepts. But instead of changing the model message, we need to go back to the original model message. That's the sort of ironic, I guess you could call it a twist of fate or whatever it is. Just instead of remaking movies and changing the model message, make new movies, go back to the original model message. Make new IPs and go back to first principles. Because first principles have been missing from films and entertainment for so long. And I believe people would find that to be very refreshing. And you'd have a hit. You would have an actual, honest-to-goodness blockbuster on your hands.
You always were going to have someone like him make this type of movie. And with someone like Armie Hammer, and I know he has his own list of controversies, and that's not important to what this video is about, but he is a good actor.
I really don't care.
Like,
yeah,
Armie
is he a
Hammer
good actor?
Actually is talented. This is something.
Is he a good actor? Does he not constantly prattle on about woke shit to the media? I understand Hollywood's not exactly going to be a right-wing sort of town, but it's like, if he knows how to act and if he knows how to act well, and he doesn't constantly prattle on about woke shit to the media, that, again, the bar is in hell right now. That's how low it is.
He loves doing, and he is an outsider.
I'll take it.
And he hasn't been able to get any work for years, and so this is his new breakout role. And because of these two people coming together,
that's a shame because he's
actually care about
he's a decent actor.
Somebody like Uwe Boll, who maybe doesn't
he looks good for the part.
Movies we would want to see all the time, or the things we would want to do. This guy has balls. That's the one thing you can't say about Uwe Boll is that he doesn't have balls. He does. And that's exactly what was needed for this film. Was somebody who just doesn't give a fuck about what other people say or other people think, what they approve of, because that's the point about art is it's subjective. What you think is good art and what somebody else thinks is horrible art, it doesn't matter. You don't get to decide what is and what isn't. You can say it isn't, and that's fine. You can hate it, that's fine, but it's his movie. And they did do a decent job. Like I said, there's some stuff that don't need to be in there. And I mean,
At least
the
he did
migrant
something.
issue of the film,
More than can be
it's
said
kind
for a
at
lot
the
of people.
beginning, and then it doesn't really come up until like halfway through the movie again.
Yes, you could say he
But
has
that's besides the
balls.
point. What they've managed to do was take these issues and these problems and put them in this medium, something that people have been begging for, people have been hungry for years. And more importantly, in a way, this film has done something that a lot of movies can't do, which it has become memeable. And why that's a good thing is because in this day and age, with the culture war, with all of these ideas and
It's really
issues,
good, actually.
it's almost all online. It's through social media. And one of the
Not only in the short term, if your film is memeable, not only in the short term does that mean potentially higher ticket sales, higher purchases on home video, be that on disc or on streaming, but that also means continuous residuals, fairly strong continuous residuals. People keep going back to the film. They keep watching it. And each time they do, the people involved in making that film, they make money. The studio makes money. It might not necessarily equate to a big burst or a big windfall, but keeping something memeable like that, sort of evergreen memes that get shared all the time, and people start asking the question of where is that from? And they learn where the meme comes from, and then they go see the film and take that and multiply it times however many and keep repeating it over and over again throughout the years. It has the potential to turn into, I guess you could call it a slow burn of sorts, where it's consistent. It's consistent, where people just keep coming back. They keep watching it over and over again. Keeps getting referenced. Leads to more people watching it. From a business standpoint, from an investor standpoint, studios love that shit.
biggest things that works with that stuff is memes. It is. And now you're seeing it, dude. You see people all over X
memes are sometimes
talking
the
about
best
how
form
they
of
walk into
advertising.
Costco and they see all these brown people, like my face after walking through Costco for 10 minutes. My face after leaving the DMV.
Felt.
My face after the judge releases the blacks for the 15th time for assaulting a white woman. It's a meme, and that's
Yeah.
good. Like, these are things that work. Because
While you go away for 15 years for a small parking violation.
this identity politics, this identity war, this culture war that has been going on for so long, a lot of it is through these mediums. It's through memes, it's through pictures, it's through discourse online. This is added to that. And that's not something you can just do. It's something that just kind of happens. When you see movies that try to become memeable, they usually fail. But this movie is a gold.
You can't be a tryhard with something like that. It has to just happen naturally. You try to force it or make it happen, you'll fail. It has to happen organically.
Fine. For reaction content and for just kind of getting people to talk about these problems. And that's why it's on a different level. And I think Tristan Tate made a pretty good point when he talked about this movie. And he said the only reason it got banned and the only reason these things are seen as violent is because it's a white guy who's killing immigrants that are raping women. That's literally it. He said,
Yeah, had it been a black or brown man in the lead role, or even a woman, this probably would have been allowed to be seen in more countries. But then that on its own would just muddy the waters. It would just muddy the whole message. The impact would not be as striking as it is.
if you had a movie about a black person going to Germany and there was a rape gang with a bunch of white dudes and he just decides to go death wish on their ass and kill them, it would have never gotten banned. There would be no controversy at all. People would say, well, it's just a little bit violent, but if it's too violent for you, then don't watch it. Don't worry about it. But because it is a white guy and because it is dealing with these problems, it is too much. It has crossed the line. And in a lot of ways, it doesn't even go as far as it could have. And so with this war that's going on, with the masses constantly being socially engineered, because that's what you get with the systems that we have in the West. You
don't
will
look back in
always
anger.
have propaganda. You will always have social engineering. You're never going to get rid of that. And I hate that a lot of people on the right, they like to kind of live on this moral high ground in like an ivory tower where they refuse to engage in social engineering or propaganda. They see it as like bad. And in a funny way, they're so prideful of their morality, which is a sin, by the way. They're so prideful to the fact that they won't do those things, and it somehow makes them better than everybody else. And it's like, okay, great. You're in your ivory tower. You have this morality that you don't, engage in propaganda, but like, your kids are getting raped and murdered. It's like, congratulations. Wow, what a great person. When I see people who think like that, I see it as pathetic and weak. And that's why if you want to win this, if you want to win this culture war, if you want to save the West, you do have to engage in propaganda. And like I said, this movie is a gold mine for that stuff. It's a gold mine for the memes. It's a gold.
You have to learn how to propagandize. You have to learn how to spread memes. You have to learn how to keep your message simple yet effective so that it spreads. I suppose in a word, you have to learn the fine art of samizdat. Don't think anyone would have opposed Sam Jackson in such a role, even if it was migrant gangs. Probably not. Maybe if it were a younger Samuel L. Jackson. We have to remember that Mr. Jackson is starting to get a bit long in the tooth. I believe he is now in his 60s, maybe his 70s. He's not a young man anymore. Would have been more effective, I think, if he were younger. The tired old man who snaps, though, I don't know. It could be made to work. I just don't know if it would be as effective as the strong, young, white leading man who feels he's got nothing to lose, like with Armie Hammer. He's 77. Good Lord. They weren't kidding when they say black don't crack. He looks good for 77. I will give him that. My principles only apply to those that share them. Leftists have none. They don't get the protection of mine. Exactly right. Don't extend the protection of your principles to the people who hate you and want you dead. No mercy.
Gold mine for the reactionary pics. When some stupid immigrant says some dumb shit online, you can just respond with a picture of Armie Hammer's face, and it's like, dude, you're going to do numbers online. That's good. That's a good thing. It has done so much for us in ways I don't even think we've realized yet, and that's why I say the quality doesn't really matter. So fuck it. If Uwe Boll wants to make 20
sometimes
of these
quantity
bitches,
over quality.
let him do it.
You can work on quality
let him make
later.
20 of these films. He says the next one, if he gets the funding, is going to take place in America. I'm all for that. Even if it doesn't go as far as it needs to as a story, to where it's like,
better than nothing.
You're addressing the rape.
At this point, beggars cannot be choosers. We are going to have to take what we can get.
Gangs and the migrant crisis. And
the good news is that Uwe Boll has options. He does not, if he makes a film in America about these sorts of issues, he doesn't have to go to Hollywood. He can go other places. There's film studios in Georgia. There's place he can film in Florida. I think there's still film studios somewhere in Texas that he could turn to. And he can film a really good movie and never once have to set foot in Hollywood. Falling Down is a movie that's hard to compete with, and it's the snapping main character who lived right, followed the rules, got screwed as a genre. That was a really good film. Michael Douglas, Robert Duvall, may he rest in peace. That was a brilliant film. Morgan Freeman is 89, not nearly as much older than Sam Jackson as I was expecting. Hammer 196658, thank you for the follow over on Kick. Welcome in. 89 years old for Morgan Freeman. And most of what you see with Morgan Freeman these days is just commercials for the pharmaceutical industrial complex. Now, I think he recently did a series of adverts for Audi. Even going all the way back to the Christopher Nolan Batman films with Morgan Freeman as Lucius Fox. He admitted even back then he's like, yeah, I'm just in it because, it's a Christopher Nolan film. It's going to be a big blockbuster, and he just said basically, I'm in it for the money. I'm just doing like Sir Alec Guinness at this point. I'm in it for the money. I imagine that's what he's doing now with all of his commercial work, mainly because, the roles in Hollywood may have dried up a bit for him in his older years. But even people like Morgan Freeman still have bills to pay, so guess that means you got to take work as a spokesman for the pill pushers. Don't fault him for scrapping up money at his age while he still can. No, it's true. I mean, I'm sure they're paying him very well to push product, whatever the product may be. So he's, he may have bills to pay, but I can't imagine he's hurting for money at this point. He's going to have a very, very comfortable retirement if he chooses to retire. He's not technically in retirement, though to him this might be retirement, doing a couple of adverts a year for whatever company is willing to pay his rate, and he just sort of leaves it at that. Rest of the time he's just enjoying life, probably spending as much time with the grandchildren and maybe even the great-grandchildren while he's still got time. I do find his opinion on Black History Month agreeable and some of his other political commentary to private opinions. Yes, he is... Morgan Freeman always kind of struck me as fairly based sort of fellow.
Politicians who are covering for them, but why are those things even here in the first place? And well, it is because of race communists and because of Jews, quite frankly. And even if he doesn't want to take it that far, that's fine. The fact that they're even addressing the problem of the rape gangs is good. And like I said as well,
at least they're talking about it.
So
many years they refused to
make a movie like this.
They denied it was even happening.
These things, it had to be outsiders. It had to be people who just don't fucking give a shit and are just willing to do what they want to do in a movie, regardless of the quality. It had to be somebody like Uwe Boll, and it had to be an actor like Armie Hammer. And they've struck gold. They really have, in their own way. And
they were the indispensable men of the
especially
time.
In this day and age, where making films, it's easier to do than ever before. You're going to have other people.
Howdy and GT, welcome in.
Might make
Thank you for redeeming Not First. Also, hello.
Writing, whatever. And it could even be Uwe Boll. The sequels could just be better. Who knows? But you're going to have more people want to make movies.
It could become a film franchise, Citizen Vigilante. It could become a modern-day take on a type of dirty-heady man taking the law into his own hands sort of thing. And it could be good. The concept is there. I can see the potential.
Long,
Thank you for the redeem.
That was a bit British, wasn't it?
Well, that one was a bit more Japanese than anything, but all right.
About these things. You're going to have more people willing to do that because they know that there is a desire for this. There's a need. People want to be heard on these issues. And you should support it, not because of its quality, but because of the fact that these people are willing to represent you in a day and age when all Hollywood does, all the industry does with this art form is just demonize you. Yeah. Demonize white people.
Everyone else just hates you and wants you dead. And so often, their shills keep talking about how, you gotta support these films. You gotta consume product and get excited for next product. We don't really have anybody else on the other side saying, no, consume our product, get excited for our next product. That's needed here. Everyone needs to go see Citizen Vigilante. Go see it multiple times. Bring your friends, bring your family. If it's out on whatever format for home video, whether it's streaming or Blu-ray or DVD, get it. Host some watch parties. Gather together friends and watch the film together. When the film was made available for, 36, 48 hours on X, courtesy of Mr. Musk, I can imagine a lot of people were hosting watch parties, not just like our based Foxu Kirche, but plenty of people in other Discord servers, VCs, anywhere people could gather, physically or virtually, to watch the film. I'm sure it was happening, and happening quite a bit, and it needs to keep happening. It needs to become part of a film playlist of sorts. If you like this content and it's important to you, whatever it may be, keep supporting it and keep telling people about it. Have you seen Citizen Vigilante yet? Oh, it's a great film. You gotta see it. It's not perfect, but man, it's good, and it's a really good message for our time. Even something so simple as that. Just simple word of mouth can have such an effect. I think we're going to go ahead and cap it off here because we did get off on a lot of tangents and things with this particular one.